Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. Welcome. I have a small disclaimer before we start. Just to set expectations, we have the slides, yes. To make sure we align a bit of expectations, especially given the title of this presentation. If you came to this talk thinking that we will be giving punches to each of the libraries to make them bleed until only one of them stays alive, I'm sorry to tell you, this is not that kind of talk. Actually, that is a movie. It's called Mad Max Furiosa, and it's in another theater. So here, the objective is quite different. I actually think that both of these libraries are awesome. They are full of features. But without getting too much into spoilers territory, what I can tell you is that the objective of this talk is to give you, help you find out which one of these libraries works best for your particular needs. So with that disclaimer out of the way, we're going to start this show. And for this show, I'm your host, Sebas. If my English sounds a little bit funny, it's because I'm Spanish. But I do live and work in Amsterdam. In an agency called Q42. Agency means that we actually have clients. We do apps and webs and backends, whatever, for clients. And these clients can be from small, cool, new startups to really big corporations. And that is nice for me because it gives me the opportunity to work in very different projects and with different setups and different clients. But more of those later. Now that you know a little bit about myself, I want to know a little bit about yourself. And given this is a talk about dependency injection, the elephant in the room is Dagger. So please raise your hand if you ever use Dagger or Hilt or any. Wow, I think I have a full everybody. Okay, good. So you're in the right to talk. That's good. Because usually before going into all the technical details, I always like to ask myself and my company too, why? Why are we doing this? What is this thing that we want to solve instead of just, oh, let's finish and put it in production? So because most of you already know Dagger and dependency injection, you probably all know that dependency injection is just a technique to achieve the dependency inversion principle. And what is the dependency inversion principle? Well, it's just the D in the solid principles. That's all you need to impress any recruiter. But actually, for the purpose of this talk, dependency inversion principle, what it tries to make sure that the high-level dependencies in your application, this will be like your use cases or where you put your business logic, does not depend on low-level modules like your database or your network. Just one more tip of advice on the theory. I have been doing this for several projects, as I told you, and through the years, instead of going through all that technical jargon for the product owner, if you ever have to create a new ticket and start your dependency injection setup, what I nowadays say to my product owner, instead of all of that, I just say, look, I'm just going to spend a couple of days setting up the dependency injection framework to make sure that after a few cycles of and weeks of development, the code doesn't turn into this huge hairball. So hopefully, usually the product owner immediately says, end of the discussion, no need to explain further, do it, whatever it takes. They don't want to have this. So now that we have covered what is and why do we want to do dependency injection, now we're going to go into the actual how. And for that, we need a library. For this part, I could just throw at you a list of features for both of them and just compare a table of features. But we all know that reality is way more complex, and especially the reality of projects, than just a list of features. So instead, what I'm going to do is share with you some experiences and the thought process that went into selecting one of these dependency injections framework for a specific project. So the project that I'm going to talk about is to create we got to this project, I think, end of last year, to create we wanted to create a Kotlin multi-platform library and use it into an existing app that was already live in the US for 40 million users. I think you know the company is the biggest toy seller in the world. They put the toys in these small boxes, and they also put some food inside the box. I don't care about the food. I think you all know the company is called McDonald's. The food is not important. The most important thing is the toys for me. So basically, for this company, we wanted to, for this project, we started with a small team with a couple of mobile developers, and looking at the options available, well, the first one out of the window is Dagger and Hilt, because it doesn't support Kotlin multi-platform. Not now. There is, I think, a GitHub issue, maybe in the future, but it will be not in the immediate or even medium term or short term. So we have to look somewhere else. There are a lot of dependency injection frameworks. You can even roll your own if you want. So that's a possibility. Reinventing the wheel. I have seen it. I don't recommend it. But from all the other options, there is also Koin that I don't talk in this talk, but I didn't see in any of these other libraries significant advantages compared to the ones that we are going to talk today. So that's why I will focus only on these two, but probably most of the things that you see here are applicable for other libraries. So with that, let's get into the first contender is Koin. If you were in the previous talk, you probably already heard about the Koin and how to set it up. I will just go into how we use it and how it is. So it's a pragmatic dependency injection framework from the get-go. It was designed to be easy and simple and readable with a very nice DSL, because it was, from the beginning, the objective was to simplify the dependency injection configuration, which is usually the bottleneck of any dependency injection setup. So with these basic three components, you can do a lot in Koin. With a single off, you just provide a singleton. With a factory, you just provide new objects, and then you wrap all of these in the nice module, and then you can get very far with it. But the good thing is this library also has other really cool features, like advanced features like scoping. It even supports also assisted injection, which, is really nice. And now we go into more the pros and cons of this library. The first one I already told you is a very easy to DSL to read, so that's very nice and good to get started. There's a lot of documentation in the library itself, in the project, on the website. They have a lot of examples with different setups, but also blog posts, but also outside of the Koin project. In the wild in GitHub, you can find a lot of projects with people experimenting with it in different setups. So that's good because you have a lot of places to draw from examples or things that are not weird. And like I said, with the DSL, also the boilerplate is quite minimal, which is a plus. So I was very happy with the simplicity of the setup in one project that I started using it. But requesting dependency is a little bit like magical. You just do inject or get, and then you just get whatever object you wanted. And sometimes it can be a little too magical and prone to errors when using parameters. So this is actually leading me to the cons. The biggest one is that you don't have full compile time checks, and that can lead to problems, and actually the problems are crashes in runtime. This is especially true when you are using dependencies with parameters. Koin offers a very nice and easy unit test system to verify that your dependency setup works. Also, you can use alternatives since more than a year now, annotations, if you really like annotations instead of the DSL. But both of them will make sure that you have a really safe configuration of the dependencies, but a safe configuration doesn't imply that it's crash-free on runtime. So in our case, for example, we use a view model with an ID on the constructor parameter. So think of this like a product ID for your view model. So if you pass the wrong type of parameter to Koin when you are requesting a dependency, he will happily compile and he will happily run and then happily crash. So that was exactly what happened to us. We had this view model with this unique identifier to inject in the parameters. Sadly, with Kotlin multi-platform, we were using a value class for this thing, but iOS is not so happy with value classes in Kotlin multi-platform, so we have to revert to just a simple string. I did that refactor, everything fine in Android Studio, but then when I ran, crash in Koin because I was passing a value class that was not needed anymore, and he wanted a string. So To be fair, also, this doesn't happen too often because it's not everywhere that you request dependencies with extra parameters. And you kind of catch it fast. This kind of requesting parameters is called assisted injection, by the way. So, pros and cons. Now, if we go to the other side of the fence and we start with Kotlin-inject, it's different because it is a compile time dependency injection framework, which means everything gets compiled. And the APIs for all of it are based on, or most of it, annotations like Dagger or Hilt. And it also provides advanced features like Koin with scopes, also assisted injection. And one really cool feature of Kotlin-inject is that it allows you to do what they call it function injection. This maybe is new for you, and I love it because it's very useful for compose, which is functions. So you can, bear with me, you can create a type alias with the same name as your composable function, and if Kotlin-inject has all the dependencies that your composable has or requires, you just call this type alias, which is the same name as your composable with no parameters, and whoop, you get your composable call with all the dependencies that were needed. I love it. I think it's really cool, but it's actually abusing the Kotlin type system because it was not designed type alias to do that. So the jury is still out there if it's the right choice or not. But for the moment, for me, it's very nice. So if we go to the pros and cons, like I say, it's a compile time, so it generates all the code. Everything that is required is there. If there is any configuration problem, it will fail compiling, and the IDE will tell you exactly where to fix it. There is also no impact at runtime. I skip on the previous slide mentioning that there is a small impact in Koin runtime, but it's so negligible that I just put it for, so you know, but it's less than a second, so I don't think it's a very big deal in Koin. But in Kotlin-inject, because everything is already compiled, there is no overhead or runtime. And it also generates a little bit less code than Dagger, so in theory it could compile faster, but yeah, don't quote me on that one. Also, the API is very inspired and very similar to Dagger, which, given the learning curve of Dagger, could be a bad thing, especially for newcomers that haven't seen Dagger or dependency injection ever. But I have a confession to make. I am a big fan of Dagger. I love it. So for me, it's a really good, when I opened Kotlin-inject for the first time and I knew inject and all this scope, all these annotations were exactly the same. So it was really nice. And even better than Dagger, when I found out that in Dagger you have this concept of components and modules, which are not the same, but kind of overlapping and mixing. And in Kotlin-inject, they decided, well, these two concepts, let's pack it into one, and we call them components. There are no components and modules. So it's the same concept. And funny anecdote, this thing in Kotlin-inject is called components, and in Koin is called modules. So it's exactly the same thing. You don't agree on how to call it, but there is only one type of, well, the definition will be like a container of dependency providers. So that's nice. The not so nice things is that it's a relatively small community compared to Koin, and there are nice examples, but they are not so extensive, and there are no official tutorials. There are people that write blog posts, but it's way less content on the internet to draw from. And if you're, especially in this case, we're comparing with Koin, the DSL for Koin is way easier, especially for you that you know Dagger, than the learning curve of learning Dagger for the first time or learning Kotlin-inject. So it's more complex and for newcomers. So now we come to the conclusions and the decisions. By the way, did I say that I love Dagger? I love Dagger. But I think that the fact that it was so difficult for me to learn Dagger, and it was so much effort that I put into mastering Dagger, now I'm stuck in this kind of Stockholm syndrome love relationship with Dagger. So I love it, but like all love, is complicated. Drum roll. And for this project, we actually chose Koin because, like I said at the beginning, it's a small project. We also have an iOSer looking at the code base, And it's Kotlin multi-platform, which means a lot of new stuff and new APIs that almost nobody is used to. So in this case, the software learning curve of Koin was easier for a newcomer, especially for somebody outside of Android. And a larger community will really help the other developers finding solutions for these problems. Don't get me wrong, I still love Kotlin-inject, but life is complex, and sometimes you have to get over your Stockholm syndrome and embrace reality. And the reality is that for this specific project and for this team, it worked better. So, just to recap, I'm going back to the beginning. Remember the why? We wanted to avoid that hairball thingy. But the other extra objective is I wanted, in this specific project, for this specific team, and for this Kotlin multi-platform setup, it was a key point to be newcomer friendly. Of course, your team might be very different from this specific project example. So with a large enough group of Dagger experts that can maintain the DI setup and you don't have to worry about newcomers, I think Kotlin-inject could be a really good option for you. But yeah, there is no silver bullet for anything, so choose the right tool for the job. And with that, folks, is all I have for you before I run out of time and oxygen. So thank you.